There are words you're using right now that are telling your clients to pay you less. This could be within your proposals, could be within your emails. It could also be within the sales conversations that you get to hold between you and your clients. And this has nothing to do with the pricing, whether it is right or wrong, but it has more to do with the kind of language that you use while interacting with those clients. And if I'm being honest, if you're watching this video right now, you've probably used at least 3 of them today. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 word categories that kill your perceived value the moment they get to leave your mouth. And if you stick well enough till the end, I'll also be sharing the exact words that you should replace these words with so as you increase on your perceived value. Now, here's why these words matter. Last week, as I was going through all my sales conversations, specifically targeting those where all my clients were pushing back, where all the deals I was trying to close were stalling, and where I was discounting. And as I was going through all those conversations, I noticed a pattern, and that pattern wasn't that the price was the problem that was causing resistance, but it was entirely me, specifically with how I was using my words to make clients maybe buy into my offer, maybe buy into things I was trying to sell to them. So basically, I was trying to train my clients to undervalue the kind of work I was doing for them by using my own language. So what does that get to mean? It simply means that every word that you get to use to describe your work is a pricing decision that you pass on to your clients to make. For you to have a clear picture of what I'm trying to mean, you need to understand what I call the language to price flow model. Yeah. So this language to price flow model, it flows like this. It always starts with the words that you use, and these words, they get to shape your client's perception towards the value that you're trying to charge them. And from there, they get to make a decision as to whether they take on the deal that you have now or you're suggesting, or pay you the amount of fee that you're asking, or to even get to pay you less. Yeah. So that is the whole thing that this video is going to base on. Why did I take you through all that model? Is because it makes you understand that before you even get to name your number, your language has already told your clients under which category they should file you into, as to whether you're going to be a transformation person or as to whether you're going to be someone who is a commodity. And with that being said, let's take a deep dive into the 5 word categories that kill your perceived value. The first category are the effort words. These get to teach your clients to evaluate your value in terms of effort, which is the worst possible calculations for anyone in terms of premium pricing. So if I were to put it different, these get to describe your work in terms of time, they get to describe your work in terms of sessions, and they get to describe your work in terms of output. And examples of words I can get to mention here could be sessions, it could be number of engagements that you get to have with your clients, it could be hours worked per month or hours worked per week. And the most used words currently are my rate is. So for each of these words, they tend to communicate a specific kind of notion before your client. For instance, if you say, I'm going to charge you a certain number of sessions, it means that you're tying your value to the number of meetings that you tend to hold between your clients. Yeah. And if we are to use the same example, let's say if you're using words like, we are going to have this amount of engagements throughout the week, maybe 3 engagements in a month. That means now your duration is the product and not the outcome. And so many of these words. So what you really need to understand when it comes to effort words is that they invite a client to do measurements. That is, they get to measure what it is that they are getting in relative to the price they are making. And when they start measuring, they're automatically going to start to calculate. And the moment they start calculating, that's rest assured, they are going to get into some sort of negotiation. So how do you get to replace this? Now, it is quite simple. Get to swap your effort language with outcome language. So what do I get to mean by that? So if you're the kind of person who uses, I'll get to give you a certain number of sessions, then swap that with, by the end of our working together, you'll have a pricing structure that lets you earn more while having fewer clients. That's it. And if you're the kind of person who likes to use engagement as the effort word, then I'll swap that by saying, by the end of the 90 days, the goal is for you to have your first premium client closed. Period. Now, category word 2 are the flexible words. Now, these words signal to your client that your price is negotiable before they even get to ask. Meaning that by using these flexible words, you open a negotiation that you didn't even intend to start in the first place, simply because of your own language. And an example of these words could be, I'm flexible. We can always get to work something out. And in other cases, you could say words like, let me know what gets to work for your budget. And even other people take it a step further and say, it will all depend on what you need. And tell you what, just as the effort words were, each of these flexible words also get to communicate a message to your clients. For instance, if you say that you're flexible on pricing, you're telling your client that there is an available lower price that is attached on the same value you're trying to sell to them. And also, if you're the kind of person who says, we can work something out, basically you're trying to tell your clients that your price is the starting point and you can always get to adjust whether you increase or decrease, and that's it. So the thing you need to understand when it comes to flexible words, these get to communicate uncertainty. And the thing with uncertainty, it is always contagious, meaning that if you tend to sound unsure about the price that you charge, even your clients will be unsure about the price they are going to give you. And in most cases, they'll also be unsure about the value that you're trying to pass on to them. Now, for those of you who are fond of using flexible words and you want to turn things up and increase your perceived value, this is exactly what you should be doing. Swap flexible words with investment language. And that means that now you should stop using words like, I'm flexible on pricing, and start saying words like, my investment for this engagement is this price. Even if the clients push back, don't move the number. Instead, get to reinforce the value that you bring onto the table. Because once you get to do that, now you start redirecting the conversation from price back to the value that you provide. Now, if you're finding value in this video, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing just for more videos like this. Now, back to the video. Word category number 3 are the commodity words. Now, the thing with commodity words, they get to describe a category and not a transformation, meaning that every time you use a category language, the client starts to file you alongside every other founder, every other service provider that they have ever spoken to. And not only that, they also get to start doing price comparison. And that is one thing that you wouldn't wish to have. Now, some of the examples that most of you get to use include, I'm a consultant, I'm a service provider, I help businesses grow. And lastly, what used to be my favorite, I provide strategic advice. So if you're using any of these words, there are things you need to understand. For instance, if you say that you're a consultant, that makes you no different from any other kind of person who says that they are consultants. And just to make things easy, you're going to be easily forgotten if you keep using such words. And another way of turning things around is that you need to learn to be specific, because specificity is the antidote of commoditization. The more specific you are about who is it that you exactly help and what exactly gets to change when you work together with them, the less your price gets compared to the rest of other people within the same niche or to the rest of other people within the same category. Word category number 4 are the apology words. Now, for those of you who don't know what these are the words that most of you founders get to use every time you feel nervous, especially about the prices that you're trying to charge. And you're doing this as a way of trying to soften the initial price or the initial price tag you've already charged or you've already measured. Why? Because you really don't want to make your client feel uncomfortable. And just to give you some of the examples of the apologetic words most of you are familiar with, these include, I know it's a lot, but then you give on some other explanation. The other one is, this might be more than you're expecting. Okay, then the other one is, I really don't want to price you out. And then lastly, this is on the high end, but, now the thing you intended to make a client feel so comfortable are the things that are going to make your clients feel uncomfortable and nervous. So whoever is using such words, take note of that. Now, the thing that is going to overturn apologetic words so that you increase your perceived value is one statement. Get to replace apology words with silence. That means that after you naming your price, pause. Let that silence get to sink in. And yes, I understand some of you might give it a pause and then immediately want to fill up that space by explaining why. But any moment you choose to make that mistake, you're instead going to make your client feel nervous, a thing you wanted or you thought you're trying to avoid. And the reason as to why I'm advocating so much of the silence is because founders who hold the silence after naming a price, they always get to communicate something more powerful. And that is, their number they've stated is not negotiable. And that is within their minds and on their physical look. And yes, I understand there are moments where a client is going to respond after you keeping the silence. And yes, instead of you trying to lower your price, instead hold that number. Don't make a mistake of lowering it. And if that's too much and you feel like you want to say something, there's always one key question that you need to ask. Ask them, what would make this feel like a clear yes for you? Simple as that, and keep quiet. That one more question you ask does more work than any other explanation you could think of that you could give to convince your client. And the last category words are the vague outcome words. This is so subtle, and in my own experience, this does the most damage. And the reason I'm saying that is because these words attempt to create value but aren't specific enough to create it. And for that reason, they have been used so many times by very many service providers. They have been used so many times by different founders to the point that now they have lost their meaning entirely. Now, for those of you who are, confused about what kind of examples these are, among these include, you will get clarity, we'll work on your mindset, I'll help you get to level up, we'll optimize your approach. All words that have to do with that are exactly vague outcome words, and they're words you should try to do away with, especially if you want to increase your perceived value. Now, when it comes to overturning these words, there's simply one thing you can get to do. Always get to replace vague outcomes with specific and measurable results. And that's it. An example I can get to give you here is that instead of you saying that you'll get clarity, get to swap that with words like, by the end of us working together, you'll have a specific price point, a clear rationale for it, and a script for presenting it in your next sales conversation. And that's it. That is so specific. And the thing I love about specificity is that it does not get to persuade a client, but it instead gets to build trust. Because the moment you get to be that specific about what changes when a client works together with you, the client now starts to understand that, oh, this person has done this before. And for that same very reason, the price you get to attach on that gets to become reasonable. Now, if you're watching this and you're wondering, which of these 5 patterns is costing you the most right now? The quick answer is, go take the founder underpricing scorecard. All it's going to take is 5 minutes. And within those 5 minutes, you will leave with a clear understanding of what kind of language is costing you the most. I'll be leaving the link to it in the description. And don't just stop there. Once you have your scorecard ready, bring your results in the Price Clinic, the only community where we get to work all through this together. And I'll be leaving a link to it as well in the description.